Just a bit of background. Blackpool. So I've role at Blackpool, I'm performance manager in Highways, but I'm also the chair of the Innovations Board at LCRIG. So I've got two hats on. Through the Innovations Board, we look at innovative materials and treatments, etc. So when we did Project Amber, we did a Project Amber trial in 2019. For about 6 months, we changed things around a bit. Normally, as a local authority, you go out, measure up, draw a spec up, send it out, get prices, and then pick which one, the criteria you were trying to achieve, usually around cost. In 2019, we decided to turn that around and got all the suppliers in, gave them our network, showed them our asset stream digital data, asked them to look at the network, asked them to go out and look on the surface type, surface treatments, and come back to us and tell us what they do, because they're the ones with the biggest knowledge about their products and materials. And in that, we did some preservation work. It was really successful, and we had really good outcomes from it. On the most basic level, we did 3 times as much network for the same cost, or we saved 2/3 of the money. So it was really successful. Before I talk about Norbreck Road, as a good shot, that Howard, a bit of history about ASI and Blackpool. Around about, I've been here a long time. Some would say too long. I've been here 33 years. Back in 2009, we were using ASI for Rhinophalt and some Rhinophalt. So there came to a point that we were going to part ways. Nothing acrimonious about it. It was perfectly fine, but I had some money to spend, and Rhinophalt was suggested as a treatment on as a way of a quick and effective treatment. So I found 4 cul-de-sacs. 3 of them were, I think it would be fair to say, well at the end of dark amber, and probably a bit of a push for the product, but I wanted to try it. And I also had another problem site, which was our own doing. It was something we'd surfaced with our ops team, and we'd had a breakdown in the middle with our NOx, and it sat there, and we'd had some cold bits, and we had some underperforming. So it was a question of, do we do it again, or do we try and treat it with something? At the time, I'll be honest, it was to make it look better, just last that bit longer, just to put us on, so maybe we'd pick it up in a couple of years. If you go there today, it's called Hampshire Place. If you're interested in Blackpool, it looks exactly like it did when it was treated. Apart from, it's got a few utility patches in, but we're never going to get away from that. And the main problem on that bit of network was because it had gone on cold. It was actually losing aggregate because it was a bit cold, it was a bit thin, and this Rhinophalt has basically held it together. Yes, it's a type 4 cul-de-sac with very little traffic, but I do know we would have had to do a significant intervention within probably year 3 to correct it. So that's me early, and unfortunately for me, I was a bit further down the chain then. We didn't do it again until we came to the Project Amber. So Norbreck Road was in, we keep saying this, it was in good condition. So a lot of feedback I got from some of the engineering staff was, well, it's just, why are you trying to fix something that isn't broken? And you'll get that. And then we started, we didn't quite go to the suntan analogy. I quite like that one. In terms of treating it and preserving it, we went down the route of trying to explain it, and Howard will wince when I say this. It isn't a paint by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not suggesting it is. It's a preservative. So when I've tried to explain it to the likes of elected members, we always end up talking about, I don't know why, a wooden bench in a garden. And if you buy it, put it in the garden, don't treat it with a preservative, it will last, but it will deteriorate to a point, and then it'll fall apart. If you take the time to preserve it on a regular basis, you'll get lots of years of use out of it. That's my analogy I use for elected members. So Norbert Road was in good condition. It really was in good condition. It had a utility trench along its length, which was fine. It hadn't failed. It was line and level. had the two joints obviously, but it was a risk, and it shortened the life of the old carriageway because of this. It was an electricity trench down there. So we took the choice. The guys went out, had a look at it, and came back and said it's perfect for preservation. So we took the choice to preserve that bit of the network. We did a bit of work first. So as part of the project, we asked suppliers to collaborate. So I think we did some thermal treatment on there, and I think we did a bit of traditional patching, maybe some joint work. Then we preserved it all and refreshed all the lines. Now this seems like a really churlish point to make, but it really looks good when you finish. And for the residents and the elected members, that is really important. They'll only interact with you normally when they're unhappy with the surface or the condition or the way it looks. If you're from local authority, or if you have anything to do with local authority, you know we've got a road asset management strategy, and we've got safety inspections, and we inspect the network well, and a lot of it doesn't look good, but it's perfectly functional. We're not going to do anything. So that's one of the biggest criticisms we get. It looks terrible. When this was completed, I went up the day after, the morning after, because it was a night shift. Night shift working was fine. It went really well. We didn't get any complaints from the residents. Obviously, there's a lot of engagement goes on with them because you don't want them coming out and walking across the road. That's really quite straightforward to do. The only, if I'm honest, the only criticism we got was the amber beacons, which you can't turn off. But once we'd explained that was fine. It was done in a night. It went off, it set, it dried, it was refreshed, it was back in use well before morning. And I've been up to look at that very recently. It still looks good, and I expect many years service out of it. We also did Yeadon Way. Now, Yeadon Way is an elevated highway. If you come off the end of the M55 down the link road, the first road you get to is Yeadon Way. It takes you straight into central Blackpool. It is one of our keyest routes into town. Significantly trafficked, really heavy use. And because it was an old railway embankment, and it was turned into a highway in the late 80s, we were having trouble with the stability of the embankment. So we did it in two phases. About 5 years ago, we did about a quarter of it, nearly a third of it, stabilised it, piles, embankment stabilisation, then surfaced it. And then last year, the year before, we did the rest of it, got awarded the funding and did it and surfaced it. So one bit of it was 5 years older than the last bit. So I asked for it to be a preservative treatment with a Rhinophalt on it. That's what you're looking at there. That's the section that's about 5 years old. It functionally and inspection wise, traditional inspection, there was nothing wrong with it. It was fine. But I wanted to preserve it for a number of reasons. One, to bring it up to broadly the same brand new date as the other rest of the works. So what you do, for me, in my mind, when you preserve something, you just stop the clock running. It lives a life as it is on the day you preserve it until you do it again. And also, because it's such a key bit of network, it's incredibly difficult for me to shut it, to work on it. So we try and do it once a year for the green, cutting back the foliage, for gully cleaning. So we might shut it for 1 or 2 evenings or nights or a day, and it's really unpopular and really difficult to close it. So it means that I won't have to think about carriageway works for a number of years now, and I will keep looking at that. And to go back to Howard's point about it being on a programme, it is now on our asset management, our RAM strategy for preservation. We will look to do some preservation works every year moving forward. As part of Project Amber proper, which is starting in May this year, to got 12 contracts on a 4-year framework, and we've got the next about approximately 2 years of work. One of the first things we're going to do is some preservation works. Now we've asked the guys to look at several bits of key network for us, so we're concentrating on the SRN. So promenade, all of our promenade from essentially just before Fleetwood to Stargate, which is all our promenade frontage, which you can understand is a key bit of SRN for us. and 3 other key north-south routes we're going to look at. The first phase is essentially Blackpool's Promenade. So we're going to do that. We're going to preserve that with this treatment. It's at different ages in its life. Predominantly, it's amber because it's well looked after. A small section of it's green. It's less than 2 years old, and some of it's hideously red. So that will mean a combination of treatments delivered by the Project Amber framework, working in collaboration with each other. So there'll be some inlay patching, so maybe some thermal works, some possible patching works, as in joint sealing, etc. Whatever the combination comes back to us, we'll consider. But all of it is going to be treated. It's going to be preserved. We'll deliver that with just if you're interested, a rolling roadblock. We'll shut it in sections. It is really quick to see if you've seen one of the vehicles drive past. Once it drives past, it's done the treatment. One of the concerns you'll have if you do it in a residential area is keeping foot traffic off it. It's stop people crossing the road. That's, if I'm honest, I was quite concerned about that when we did Norbreck Road. However, it turns out to be a non-issue. It was absolutely fine. And I think probably one of the biggest questions, if you've not used it before, is how long does it take before it's dry? And that was one of my main questions. That depends on, as Howard has already said, the weather, the temperature, how windy it is, to be honest. And if you ask the guys how long it takes to cure, they'll always tell you the top end of the scale. But it was less than 2 hours for us, and I think it was late in the year as well when we did it. I think we pushed the window of laying. And it was, obviously, it's as you go through it, the first bit dries. It was fine. The guys got in and did the lining afterwards, and there were no issues around that. And consequently, after it was done, and on Eden as well, we've got great feedback from the residents about the new road. So it's really successful. Again, Howard made the point earlier about right treatment, right place at the right time. This is really a good tool to have in your toolbox for asset management. It's something I said I used it back in 2010. Didn't use it again. I intend to use it regularly now on bits of the network. The other thing that I want to try in Blackpool and other places is footway preservation, with probably using Henry Williams, who's on our framework, to deliver some footway preservation. We've got some key flexible footways that take a huge on the promenade in sections, and some of the other parts of town next to leisure centres and sports centres. We've got huge swathes around the parks are in the parks as well of flex footways that would benefit massively from this treatment. So I intend to do a bit of that myself this year. I think somebody, I've just spotted a question. Now we're going to go through the questions about 5 years. What's 5 years in terms of retreating? So obviously the M40 gets done every 5 years-ish. You can imagine the volume of traffic on the M40. And you put that analogy against the Hampshire Place I've just talked about, again, which I did in 2010. We probably should do it now, but it didn't. It's perfect at the minute. So I think it depends on, obviously it depends on the life it lives. And the traffic it gets, and how it's exposed, what elements it's exposed to. It'd be interesting for me personally when we treat the promenade, how that fares. Everything lives a very difficult life on the promenade due to the weather. We have an issue with UV. You might be smiling there in Blackpool and sunshine, but we do get enough sunshine to give us issues with UV. Certainly sand, and certainly salt air. So I'll be interested to see that this year when we get that done, get it down this year. The other thing that Howard's also mentioned that I'm keen to try is this concept of retexturing then preservation. So that's something that we're going to do through the trial, through Project Amber here, is some retexturing and then preservation, just to see. I don't think it's been done a lot or done before, and I think that's a really interesting concept. I mean, if you can retexture it, get back what you need and then preserve it, I think that's and again, if talking from asset point of view, disruption, costs, carbon, you're not bringing anything new to it. You're cutting your vehicle journeys down, and disruption on the network's a huge factor. You're cutting all that down, quick and easy. Even nighttime treatments, maybe not the retexturing, slightly noisier, but you can phase the two. So that's something I'm really positive about in terms of trying in Blackpool.